Welcome back to our latest deep dive.
Could it be here?
Today, we're getting into a really interesting product launch. It's one that's, well, it's grabbing a lot of headlines because it kind of mashes up technology with a very, very specific political identity.
Yeah, in a way that feels pretty new for the mainstream tech market, maybe.
Exactly.
We've looked at quite a bit of material, different analyses, reports, some commentary, all focusing on the launch of the Trump T1 phone and this Trump mobile service happened June 16th.
Right. And our mission here, what we want to do in this deep dive, is try and cut through some of the noise around it. There's a lot of buzz. We want to look at the claims being made, pull out the key facts that the sources are highlighting, and really try to understand the implications presented in all this material.
Basically, help you listen and get a clearer, more grounded picture of what this launch actually involves.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where do we start? The launch itself.
Yeah, let's start there. So according to the sources, June 16th, the Trump organization makes this move into the telecom space. The main thing seems to be Trump Mobile, which is this new wireless service.
And the branding is, well, unmistakable, right? Tied directly to his political persona.
Oh, absolutely. Very distinct. But it wasn't just the service plan they announced. There's a phone, too.
The T1 phone, yeah. What do the sources tell us about the actual device?
Okay, so the sources describe it as having this gold-colored casing. The price listed is $499.
$499.
And it's specifically bundled, it seems, with their monthly service plan. You get the phone with the plan.
Okay, and that plan, the price really jumped out from the sources. $47.45 a month. They're calling it the 47 plan. Did the sources get into why that specific number? Seems kind of random otherwise.
Oh, it's not random at all, according to the analysis we read. It's explicitly symbolic. It ties directly into the narrative that the 45th president expects to become the 47th. So the name, the price, it's all designed, sources say, to reflect that political ambition.
Okay, so the pricing itself is a campaign statement, basically. That's bold.
It is.
And beyond the price symbolism, the sources mention the branding leans heavily on made in America, right?
Yeah.
U.S.-based customer service, this whole Metier-centric identity.
Exactly. It's being pitched, apparently, as the phone for true patriots, people who feel maybe censored or sidelined by current tech companies.
So the positioning is really interesting.
Yeah, what's striking, and the sources really emphasize this, is just how overtly it's positioned. It's not just tech. It's a statement, a political affiliation badge.
One source had that great line describing it as, what was it? Political theater with a SIM card.
That's the one. Yeah, it kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, let's get into the phone itself then, the T1. Forget the politics for a second. What are the actual tech specs the sources lay out?
Right, the hardware. Okay, so based on the reports, we're talking a 6.8-inch AMOLED display. Pretty standard there. A 50-megapixel rear camera, 256 gigabytes of storage, and a 5,000 mAh battery. It runs Android 15.
Android 15. Okay. And for a phone costing, what, $499 now? Did the sources mention anything missing? Features you might expect at that price point?
Yeah, they did, actually. The analysis points out some things common on phones in this range, or even cheaper, that aren't there, like Face ID for unlocking or wireless charging.
Okay. No wireless charging.
Though one source did note, kind of dryly, that it does still have a headphone jack, which, for some people.
Right. A niche selling point, maybe. Okay, so $499, those specs, missing a few modern conveniences. It does make you wonder about the value proposition just looking at the hardware alone.
Exactly. And the sources seem pretty clear on this. The real draw, the juice, as one analysis put it, isn't meant to be competing spec for spec with, say, the latest Samsung or Google phone.
It's really all about the symbolism and the branding then. That's where the value is supposed to lie.
Precisely. You've got that gold finish. Sources mention an American flag-themed boot screen when you turn it on. Okay.
And pre-installed apps like Truth Social. The sources also noted the absence of certain apps. TikTok and Threads were mentioned specifically.
Ah, interesting. Curated apps.
And there was even a rumor mentioned in one source, though just a rumor, about the autocorrect potentially changing liberal to fake news.
Whoa. Okay, that would definitely lean into the ideological alignment idea. Now, you mentioned the Made in America claim earlier. That's a big part of the branding push.
Huge part.
What did the sources find when they started digging into that? Because it sounds like it might be less straightforward than it seems.
Yeah, this is where the detailed analysis in the sources gets really interesting.
Right.
They note that, okay, final assembly might happen in the U.S., possibly.
Might, okay.
But the core components,
yeah,
the really critical stuff like the chips, highly likely sourced from Taiwan or South Korea, the reports suggest. The display panels, probably China. And the operating system underneath it all is Google's Android.
Right, so the sources seem to be saying it's maybe assembled here, but manufactured globally, like most electronics. Pretty much. One source had a really blunt take on it, calling it basically a remix of a RVVL phone from China, gold-wrapped and red state ready.
Wow. Okay, gold-wrapped and red state ready.
It really highlights, as the source points out, this careful use of language around made in versus the, complex reality of how these things get built today.
Yeah.
Another source used a great analogy, actually, suggested it's like the tech version of slapping a bald eagle sticker on imported soybeans and calling them freedom seeds.
Freedom seeds. Okay. Yeah, that definitely paints a picture of the branding versus what the sources suggest is the likely reality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's switch over to the service plan then, the 47 plan. For that $47.45 a month, what do the sources say you actually get in terms of service?
So for that price, the sources state the plan offers unlimited calls, texts, and data, which is pretty standard for unlimited plans these days.
Right.
It also apparently includes access in 100 countries, telehealth services, and roadside assistance.
Okay, some add-ons there.
And a significant point the analysis highlights is the no contracts, no credit checks approach, which could, make it easier for some people to sign up.
Lowering the barrier to entry. And again, that 47 number tying explicitly back to the potential 2024 campaign. The sources seem to describe this less as just a phone plan and more like part of the campaign machinery.
Exactly. It feels very much positioned as part of the campaign trail, as one source put it. And reinforcing that, the sources mentioned there is a Trump mobile loyalty app included.
Oh, yeah.
And the reward points. Apparently, according to the source, they're called patriot points.
Patriot points, okay.
Which you can supposedly redeem for things like Trump NFTs, Mad GA hats, or, as one source joked, maybe lifetime bans from NPR.
Right, okay. Definitely leaning hard into the whole cultural and political ecosystem there.
Absolutely.
Now, this whole launch immediately sparked some analysis, didn't it? Sources raised questions about the business model and potential implications.
Oh, yeah, immediately. The sources note criticism cropping up, with some observers calling it profiteering off politics,
Meaning?
suggesting it's basically leveraging campaign energy, a political platform, potentially to drive business towards a personal venture. Analysts quoted in the sources also raised questions about, what happens down the road? If federal contracts or maybe FCC policies could somehow intersect with a product that a former or possibly future president is profiting from, that gets complicated.
Yeah, potential conflicts there. And the sources are clear that Trump isn't actually, building the phones or running the cell towers himself.
Correct.
So.
The sources clarify he's licensing his brand. The actual telecom service, the back-end stuff, is reportedly handled through a deal with an existing MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator. It's a private label or white label setup.
So it's essentially taking an existing white label service, maybe some existing hardware designs, and then wrapping it all in this very potent Trump branding and marketing it directly to his base.
That seems to be the model the sources describe, yes. A licensing play that leverages this massive, pre-existing political following.
Which brings us neatly to the cultural impact, I guess. Because according to the sources, this thing became instant meme fodder.
Oh, within minutes, yeah. The analysis mentions the jokes were flying.
I saw some of those mentioned, it only types in all SICAP US.
Yeah, or it never accepts mail-in emojis.
Calls every other phone a fake device. What was the other one? It comes with a build-a-wall hotspot blocker.
Right, exactly. Those kinds of jokes.
But while people are making jokes, the sources also emphasize there might be something more significant happening here.
Phones becoming these really explicit markers of cultural or political identity.
Yeah.
In a world where, even the apps you choose can sometimes feel divisive, this is seen by some analysts we read as maybe a step towards division based on the actual hardware you carry.
Like that idea one source floated, moving towards red phones versus blue phones.
Yeah.
And the analysis seems to suggest this isn't really about bridging tech gaps or offering broad access to everyone. It might be more about building subscriber loyalty that also doubles as voter loyalty.
Yeah, drawing a sharp contrast, as one source did, with something like, say, India's JioPhone, which was explicitly aimed at economic inclusion, getting more people online affordably. This feels different.
Very different goal.
Yeah.
So if we try to summarize what the sources present as the potential upsides and downsides.
Okay. On the pro side, as it's being pitched, You've got the promise of US-based customer support. There's the branding angle of freedom from big tech tracking, whatever that means in practice.
Right.
And that no contract, no credit check thing does potentially make it accessible to more people.
Okay. And the cons highlighted in the sources.
Well, the big ones seem to be those questionable made in America claims that the sources investigated. The fact that the hardware itself doesn't seem particularly innovative for the price. Heavily politicized design, obviously. And, as one source put it very simply, it's a gold Android in 2025, kind of summing up the tech aspect.
Yeah. What's really striking, I think, pulling together everything from these sources, is how the appeal of this product seems almost entirely separate from traditional tech benchmarks,
Yeah.
Performance, features, innovation.
It's not really about that.
No, it feels like it's focused almost purely on identity, political alignment, belonging to a certain group.
So wrapping it up, based on what we've looked at from the sources, this launch isn't just, another gadget hitting the shelves.
Definitely not.
It's a very deliberate, very high-profile merging of a consumer product with a specific political identity. And it's clearly leveraging a huge existing political base for what seems like commercial purposes.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it, about how tangled our tech choices might get with our political views down the line, and maybe how companies could try to capitalize on those divisions.
Which leads us to that final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on.
Yeah.
Based on everything we've discussed from the sources today, what does the emergence of products like this, things explicitly tied to a political affiliation, suggest about where consumer choice and identity might be heading in this digital age?
Something to think about. That's all for this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.